And I think a lot of us just we're in a place where like the unmasking needs to happen and we need to just really step into our power, our healing power, because the world needs us. So that's part of the intention of this podcast, working through those wounds of being seen, that witch wound. And yeah, like I said, personally, I come from a lineage of brujas and curanderas, healers and witches. My great grandmothers were healers and witches in their town in Dominican Republic. Welcome to Therapist Coven, where we talk all things witchy therapy. This podcast explores what it means to decolonize healing, honor the wisdom of our ancestors, and bridge evidence-based therapy with the medicines, rituals, and practices that have supported human well-being for generations. I am the host, Rysse, like Still I Rise, or rather the channel, the steward of Therapist Coven. Whether you're a therapist, healer, coach, or a curious soul answering the call of a spiritual path, welcome. The portal is open. Hello. I'm so excited to start this podcast and to give you a little bit of an introduction to why this podcast, why now, what are some of the things we'll be talking about. And so this podcast is for those who are seekers, healers, right? And therapists, especially, who are at their core healers. Those who are interested in alternative ways of doing therapy. You know, back in the day, people who would have been the witches of their towns, the healers of their towns. Therapists who are multidimensional, who are also herbalists, Reiki practitioners, plant medicine practitioners, shamans. A lot of therapists are shamans. And therapists who are decolonizing, who are really not just looking within themselves in the ways that they uphold colonizer, patriarchal, oppressive ways of being and systems, but also dismantling outside systems that are oppressive, right? That are colonizer energy. And so in this podcast, I really want to marry the wisdom of Western psychotherapy with the ancient wisdom of Indigenous, of Eastern healing traditions, of ancestral healing traditions, right? Things that have been around for generations and ages, right? And also Western psychotherapy, because you know that saying, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't know where that comes from. You know what? I'm gonna look into that because there might be some oppressive things in there of the origins of that. As we know, a lot of sayings have some, you know, either racist or whatever origins. But anyways, to keep the baby in the bathwater, there's some wisdom to Western psychotherapy. You know, I personally started with talk therapy when I was 16, and it saved my life. I didn't have the best therapist. My therapist talked a lot, actually. She talked a lot about herself. But it was a space where I could go once a week and check in and, you know, really actually reflect on myself. And, you know, there's wisdom. There's wisdom in talk therapy and all the modalities, CBT, DBT, humanistic psychology, right? Like all these different modalities. There's a lot of wisdom. And so I want to bring it all together, right? And see how we can integrate so that it's not separate, because there's so much wisdom in healing modalities and just the art of therapy. I really think that therapy can be a sacred practice, right? Two people coming together for the sole purpose of healing and recovery. Like someone's really making the commitment of like, I'm going to go into myself and look at my shit. Like that's no small thing in this world, right? I'm going to take some responsibility by going to this person, by going to this room once a week and looking at my stuff. and questioning some things and seeing what I need to change and, where, what in my relationships could change. So that's some of the intentions of this podcast. And really, it's also to create our own webs of connections because we've already seen at this point that the mental health care system is really a mess. And it really is repeating a lot of the carceral and harmful systems that have already been in place for generations, right? And so this is about creating our own systems, a system that's not rotten from the root. Like, how can we have mental health care and not just mental health care? Because we all know it's not just mental health, right? Like, at this point, why are we still calling it mental health? Like, it's so much more than mental health. It's spiritual health, it's emotional health, it's community health. So, how can we have this holistic health in the therapy room come from a place that is really rooted in care, not from this rotten mental health institutional systems that we know today, the systems that, lock people away when they're having a crisis, that don't treat them very well, right? The same systems that used to like lock women up for, questioning things back in the day. So that's one of the intentions of this podcast. I want to have my friends over here. I want to have colleagues. I want to have, leaders and the therapy that are also spiritual and have these conversations. A lot of these conversations I'm already having with my people. So I'm like, let's just hit record, right? And to also be accessible. Therapy isn't cheap. We know this. And there's several reasons for that. First of all, insurance, it's a whole thing that we'll get into in a whole podcast. But to be a therapist takes a lot of energy, right? And it's not just that hour that you're in session with someone. And also, therapists are self-employed. So they have to pay taxes, they have to pay, platforms, they have to take notes, they have to, like, they're their own accountants. Like, there's so many things. So therapist isn't cheap for a reason, right? It takes a lot of energy to be one-on-one intimately with somebody and really caring for them, because therapists really hold people's hearts in their hands daily, multiple people daily. We're having super deep, intimate, soul-wrenching connections with people daily. So this podcast is to be accessible, right? To get a lot of the conversations happening in therapy, happening within therapists out there for free. It's also about community building. I know there's a lot of therapist witches out there because they reach out to me. I'm connected to them, and we're all hungry. We're all hungry for this connection, right? Because we go into our jobs. Sometimes some of us have like corporate jobs, or we go into our mental health care counseling centers and we have to put on a mask, right? We can't fully bring in our spiritual selves, our witchy selves, right? Our shaman selves. And so this is a space to bring it all in and just reclaiming healing, a healing that's holistic, a healing that we feel in our bones from our ancestors who've been doing this. It's in us, right? So how do we connect to that? And personally, for me, this is really about working through my fear of being seen. So, I have the witch wound, which a lot of us have, a lot of us who have ancestors who were witches, or even just past lives, if you believe in past lives where you were a witch. There's that wound that if I'm seen for my magic, I'm going to be persecuted. That's real. And with social media today, I mean, it's real easy to come after someone. We can have the whole conversation about cancel culture at some point later on in the podcast. But yeah, it's really intense to put yourself out there authentically for the whole world, for a whole stage of the world that is social media, to judge you. And so this is part of me healing that, because there's so much that I feel like being a therapist and being a witch and being a healer can be benefited from the world. And I think a lot of us just we're in a place where like the unmasking needs to happen and we need to just really step into our power, our healing power, because the world needs us. So that's part of the intention of this podcast, working through those wounds of being seen, that witch wound. And yeah, like I said, personally, I come from a lineage of brujas and curanderas, healers and witches. My great grandmothers were healers and witches in their town in Dominican Republic. So my parents come from Quisqueya. They're immigrants from Quisqueya. So I'm a second generation immigrant. And I found out that my grandmothers were the healer and the witch of my town when I would say my early 20s. And at this point, I already knew I wanted to be a therapist. So I started saying that I wanted to be a therapist from a very young age. I must have been 9 when I would say I wanted to my mom that I wanted to be a psicóloga. And I'm not sure where I picked that up. I must have heard it somewhere, but I always knew like there was something in me that knew I wanted to help people. And people always came to me too. From a young age, people would come to me and tell me things. I was people's confidants. And so I feel very grateful. That calling has always been very clear to me. And then at some point down the line, trauma happened, right? A lot of us have complex trauma, which is not just a big trauma, but just consistent trauma, right? Consistent, maybe emotional neglect or poverty trauma or, consistent family dysfunction, addiction, and all of that becomes complex trauma, which really takes a toll on our psyche, on our mental health, on our nervous systems. And so at some point, I I was an atheist. I wanted to get into marketing because I completely lost touch with that calling to be of help. And then I had my first psilocybin ceremony, which wasn't really a ceremony because I was 19, but it was it wasn't like intentional, like shaman ceremony. But a cousin of mine, an older cousin of mine, handed them over. He was like, just trust me. And I trusted him. And so with another cousin of mine, it was like this huge unveiling. And I remember listening to Bob Marley and just getting a very clear message that I am a healer. There was no question. It was like, you're a healer. And I could feel this light energy. And I was like, oh, light. Like I come from the light. I am the light. I'm here to bring light. And it's been a straight shot from there in terms of my journey as a healer. I went to Naropa University, where I got my master's in contemplative psychotherapy and Buddhist psychology. So I'm also Buddhist, and that's one of the healing modalities that I integrate into therapy. Because for me, Buddhist psychology is very different than Western psychology in that Buddhist psychology doesn't pathologize someone. Buddhist psychology is not looking for how to make someone the problem, but it comes from thinking about or feeling into what is the wisdom in someone's behavior, in someone's habit, in someone's pattern, right? And so I was really called to Buddhist psychology for that reason. And also just because meditation is a big part of my life and just stillness and presence and the healing aspects of that. So that's some of the ways that I play with therapy and psychology, and I'm sure I'll say more about that. So I went through an intense initiation when I was 25, 26, maybe 28 actually. I was in my last year of grad school, and I had already taken a year off because I was burnt out. And this was a 3-year program. And so I was already dealing with sickness, with burnout. My joints would get really swelled up. but I didn't have any markers of arthritis. And I was getting really sensitive to different foods. So I took a year off. Then I went back to grad school to finish my last year. And in October of my first semester, I found mold. And this mold got me extremely sick. I felt intoxicated all the time. I was dizzy. I was foggy. I was having panic attacks and just rocked my world. Come to find out that I had to get rid of everything I owned because this mold contaminated everything I owned. I had to move, and the mold kept following me around. It would contaminate my friends' houses. So it was a really, really intense time where I had to really break down everything that I had, literally all my belongings and everything that I was, to really remember my core, that part of me that is unshakable. And it was intense. I did not know if I was going to survive that, but I did. And many, many healers go through this process of initiation where they go through something really intense, usually around their Saturn return. So if you're into astrology, it's around the age that you're 28. And it's like your whole life is turned upside down. And in the moment, you have no idea what's going on and you're just like suffering through. But after you come out of on the other side, there is something gained. And this is not to say that everything happens for a reason and, you be grateful for your traumas. Absolutely not. Some things are just messed up and that's the way they are. But for me, this particular experience was so intense and so life shaking that when I did survive it, I was really in touch with my resilience. I was really in touch with my calling, really, to be of service. Because even though I was in my last year of grad school and I felt like I was dying, there was nowhere else I wanted to be. I wanted to be in grad school. I wanted to be in my internship training to be a therapist. And so I did. And I've been a therapist ever since. So I've been a therapist for, wow, it's going to be 8 years now. And yeah, I mean, it has its ups and downs, which we'll get into, but it's super, super rewarding and deep work where it's like you're constantly being asked to face yourself because a therapist can only guide you as deep as they can guide themselves or as deep as they've gone themselves. So this work is so deep because there's no hiding, right? Your clients will come in with something that you're going through, that you've gone through. And in order for you to be able to meet them, you're going to have to be present with them, like really present. And not from a place of trying to fix them, because that's always a trap that I think Western psychotherapy brings in. This trap that we have to have a treatment plan and, we're going to accomplish this goal by the time that they're done with therapy, which again has its wisdom. It's good to have goals. It's good to have intentions. It's good to track things, not throwing that out with the bathwater. And when we really pause into the magic and the sacredness of a therapeutic relationship, there isn't necessarily a formula of like, we're going to fix this, and that. There needs to be a surrender into the journey for both the client and the therapist. As much as you go in there with an intention, there also needs to be a surrender to the process and a trust to the process. That's all I got for now in terms of intro to this podcast. You can already pick up on some of the vibes and the things we're going to be talking about here. I'm going to be having a lot of guests, interviewing a lot of my friends and colleagues. And again, a lot of this is to get out of the back rooms and the hidden altars, right? The hush hush conversations that we're having in secret because we don't really want, these administrations and systems to catch a whiff of what we're actually doing in these rooms that has so much magic, and really letting this be seen, because it's time. It's really time that we reclaim again healing, and that we honor that healing looks so many different ways, and that when you come from integrity and love and light and care, there's so much magic that happens. So welcome to you if you made it this far. If you feel called to this, there's something there, right? If it's already aligning with you, there's something there. And I look forward to connecting with you and all the connections this is going to bring in our lives as this community grows together. So thank you. Be well. Inviting a moment to pause here and just notice what's present for you. You might want to take a few deep breaths as you feel into what is your body sensing? What are you feeling? And is there anything you want to take away with you? Any lines, any perspectives, anything you want to integrate throughout your day, throughout your life? It's always good to pause between this thing and the next thing. And so just taking a moment for this sacred pause.